Would you like to support Cubs Out Loud? One way is to join us over on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, patrons get early access to our shows, the pre and post show, and various other rewards. You can learn more at patreon.com/Cubs Out Loud. Thanks to all our patrons for their support in making this podcast. It's November 10th, 2024. I'm Jeff.
Who's your bear? That's right. I am your bear.
I'm Damon.
I don't brew the tea, I just serve it.
And that makes me Gary.
Everyone else is thinking it, and I just say it.
And welcome to Cubs Out Loud, the Bear Podcast of Indeterminate Length, episode number 762. Welcome to America.
Ooh.
Wait, did I say that right? Welcome to America. Here we go. Say it right.
Hey kids, it's our third go round. We've done this twice before.
Yeah, but this one feels very deja vu-ish.
Pointed.
I feel very deja vu.
So yes, this is our historic 2024 election. We've done this twice before. We did it in 2020. We did it in 2016. And I hear you on the deja vu aspect of the 2016 thing. But yet it's different.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Different, but deja vu-ish.
Yeah.
That's why it's deja vu-ish. Not pure deja vu.
Yes. So how are we all feeling?
You know what? You know what? I'm not mad. I'm not mad.
Okay.
I'm just disappointed.
I was going to say, I'm waiting for it. I'm like, because that sounds exactly like what a parent would say. I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, that's a simple way to put it. I have had a buzz in the back of my head since Tuesday or Wednesday, really. Well, really late Tuesday night. Yeah, right before going to bed. That hasn't really gone away. A feeling, a thinking, feeling, this is rough. This has been rough. I'll just say it like that. It's been a rough few days. Dealing with the reality that I didn't think was going to happen, and now faced with that reality, being overwhelmed with what's to come and what needs to happen next, and what should I or we do next. And that's where I'm at in this. Like I was genuinely shocked and surprised. But then after that initial shock and surprise, a different feeling came over, which is similar to what Jeff said. It's a disappointment. Disappointment's a good way to put it. A where, why, how, when, and then how could you
Mhm.
kind of thing.
You
And
went
that's sort
through
of
all
where
the
it's the
stages of grief.
oh, I'm probably still in some of the stages of grief.
So I want to comment. So I woke up in the morning and my one of my discords had people saying, we're looking at Canada, we're moving to the UK. When the people who are in there from the UK says, hey, if you need a letter or anything, I can help out. And I'm like, okay, GIF, cute little GIF. And it says it's going to be okay. And then enters daddy cub mode. We got through 4 years of Trump before. We will survive another, and then he won't come back. Maybe. I'm not going to make like full promises, but ideally, he's not going to come back. He'll have spent 2 terms. That's done.
Right.
Mhm. So, I mean, I think it's fair to like think about it in terms of the 7 stages of grief. Like that's something I was talking about with a coworker. Um, yeah, it heavily impacted my workplace.
Mhm.
We we are local government. We work in public health, and so we see things through the lens of like what government entities can do to policy and to funding, and how
Mhm.
that affects our community. And so like we've been well aware that there's this potential of a big change to come in the near future in terms of what that means. And yeah, it was very quiet on Wednesday. And yeah, some people needed time, like the rest of the week. Some people were kind of in and out. Some people took like partial days.
Mm.
I think because they just, they needed to process. So, as a quick reference, the 7 stages of grief, there's shock, then denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. Um, and so I think a lot of folks who were expecting a different outcome had a whole journey to go through with those.
Right.
Since the results have come out, it's wild, y'all. I was listening to a podcast this morning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what my life has kind of been. I'm just going to say this. By the way, daylight savings time happened a week ago. So, of course, that like has, had an effect on some people.
Saving time.
It didn't. Yeah. I mean, it didn't really affect me much other than I'm more cognizant of the whole like sunlight is disappearing on us kind of thing.
Right.
But that isn't so much about daylight savings time other than, like the whole tilting axis of the earth and the rotating around the sun thing. So, but anyways, what I'm going to get to is, so this morning, yesterday, I had to work, and I'll touch on that at another point. But so I was tied up for half of yesterday with that. And because it's fall, I was like, oh, I got to like, take care of the leaves in the yard. And so I paid attention to the weather for today, and I was like, oh, like, when are we going to get precipitation again? Because I want to put the leaves away dry and not monkey around if they get wet. Because then, like, they may not dry out and it just makes a mess and crap. So, anyways, I was up at 6:30 this morning, which is not like me on a Sunday morning, but it's because the rain was a coming by like 9 a.m. And I was like, and it's supposed to rain for like 2 days straight. And I was like, ugh. So knowing my own timetable, I was like, I will get up in the morning. So I did. I went out. I got my raking done. I only wanted to do one particular section out front. And it's near the driveway and the sidewalk and stuff, because I know later in the winter, I don't want to be shoveling up dead leaves with snow. So anyways, I'm listening to a podcast. And in fact, I'm listening to this podcast with 2 old episodes. Ooh, child. Listening to people talk about pre-election stuff, but now that we're after the election, is such a mind trip.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, oh, you poor babies, you're living in the ignorance. You don't know what's coming. Like you haven't had the experience yet. Like that was like my whole reflective mood this morning. I was like, yeah. How interesting to have the retrospective look at now you know what you know versus what you didn't know then. And to me, that is what this outcome has been about. I think I will admit I am not a centrist. I'm not down the middle of the road. I am notably more on the progressive side of things in terms of like policy and concept and that type of stuff. So I live in a biased bubble in a way of like people who are like-minded. So I felt really disconnected from understanding or being able to see and potentially comprehend the outcome, like the why. There'll be political pundits. They will continue to pontificate and analyze the data. But the immediate data that came out in the first 24 to 48 hours unequivocally made it abundantly clear that this is the direction that the majority of our country wants.
Right.
In terms of leadership.
Right.
I add that on the end because I think there's been a lot of imaginative discussion about the future we're going to face, which is totally fine, but I also think it's incredibly difficult to truly know what things are going to be like. And I think there's a lot of catastrophizing. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just far more centrist, pragmatic to say we'll see what happens.
Right.
But I know I'm in the minority because that's not the people around me. A lot of folks are struggling, and they are I think they're still in the shock.
Yeah.
Maybe denial. They haven't quite moved to anger. And I probably within about 36 hours moved through a lot. But that's because in my brain, I was like, I'm not going to get stuck along the way. Stuck's not the right word. I'm just not going to dwell or spend a lot of time in a certain kind of phase. Because I still want to continue to live my own life and do my thing. And I'm just going to have a different set of potential rules in an environment in the future. I also found myself every single day recentering back, trying to rein in my mind, because I am greatly concerned I'm going to spend a lot of time in the next 4 years challenging people when shit happens and saying things like, did you vote for that? Did you vote for that? Is that what you requested? Did you vote at all? Is this what was your complacency? Is this how we ended up here? Which is a spicy kind of militant take. I want to be real careful about that because I've kind of done that before to people. I'd be like, did you vote in the last election? No, shut the fuck up. But that was before I feel like there's going to be some potential big impacts. So,
and that's, I think, the thing that is, for me, I'm trying to not dwell too much in. My brain really wants to be like, yeah, you FAFO'd, totally in this, the country is going to FAFO,
right.
And we're gonna see what happens and see how these things go. And
wait, hold on, pause for a second. Just roll back just a little bit. I am unaware of the acronym of FAFO.
Oh, sure. Fuck around and find out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, continue.
No, you're good. And I'm glad you asked, Jeff, because at first I was like, FAFO? I was like, is that fapping? And I was like, no, David wouldn't be doing that. And I was like, oh, right. Fuck around and find out. Anyways.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, but like, and that's sort of where I don't. I've seen a lot. Twitter has been a not Twitter, wrong. TikTok has been a friend and an enemy these past few days because it's great to have these bites of digital data and information and people kind of talking about this stuff and talking about their feelings and getting it out off of their chest. Um, but it can also be to the detriment because it is a lot of essentially doom scrolling. A lot of that just like constant dwelling. Because like I used to get fun little games in my TikTok about like hit the little buttons and get the cheese out of the coal, kind of thing, like those little games. Now I get like constantly hit with political things because I've been watching mostly like political, like people having conversations about politics and such. So thanks algorithms. But uh it has become a talking point, this whole like you're going to reap what you sowed in a ways. This is going to be um this is what you wanted, so now you have it. So good luck with that. Is kind of the way it's sounding. And while I can respect that, there is a part of me that doesn't want to dwell too much in that because like it or not, those things are going to also affect me, if that makes sense. Like yeah, like you're gonna get what you got because of what you voted for, but I am also because I live in this country as well. So that's sort of where my brain is going with it. Like, yeah, I want to be that, and I might like we'll see what happens in 4 years. Um, I might even say something along those lines and get that little catty about it, but um, I also know that there's a potential that is going to also affect me. And I think that's the bad side of it. Um, it would it like hindsight being what it is going to be is like I wish people would truly have understood what voting for person meant. I'm looking now, like I looked earlier at the results that are being done by the Associated Press, and I'm like, yeah, it's crazy.
Mhm.
It's very strange, and to the point where it is, yeah, depressing is a good word for it because it's showing me that there are people, there have been, there will always be people that will who wanted this. There were people in this world, in this country, that wanted this to be the result, and they're going to be happy for it. And we're already seeing, at least in regards to like social medias, the realities of these. People are talking about. I've had a few friends that have said that they're choosing not to go to their Thanksgivings with their families because they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to be around it.
Mm.
The people that they know are who they know were on the opposite from them in regards to um, their choices. So, and yeah, that's just the beginning. Like that's just a small thing. I just literally when we were in our talking about our debate in regards to whether Twitter is porn, I was hitting my Twitter, and one of the things that popped up was a screenshot of someone saying their wife is divorcing them because they voted for Trump. and he's all like up in arms because he's surprised that she has decided to make this choice and is divorcing, and she got it done so quickly. And then um also like her name, he wants she wants him to buy her out of the house, or buy him out, or something, like buy her out of the house essentially.
Mhm.
And her name is on the deed, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. So it's just this very interesting, you know, conversation, and we're seeing it happen. Like friends are leaving people, friends are being unfriended, are blocked on social medias because of um, the results. I know, me personally, I dropped a couple of people because I've, not that I saw it, but I saw that they were okay with this, and I'm like, I don't even want to have to deal with that.
That's interesting. I mean, I hadn't heard about that, but that makes sense to me. It's also intriguing. Like, I was having a conversation this week with somebody about the whole impact of like how different our U.S. society has been. Because, like, let me double check something real fast.
Mhm.
Doing a quick. Oh, it's been searched before. Not a surprise. Yep. So in the year I was born, my mother could not get a credit card on her own.
Mhm.
That was not a thing. It happened after I was born, a year later. And that was a part of the conversation we were bringing up, is like how much has changed, in X amount of time. And that some people may not realize, like, those mile markers or milestones and what that means. And yet today, we are in a very different dynamic of what can happen. So that was also interesting because have you guys heard of this? Let me see if I can find it. Have you heard of the 4B movement?
Mhm.
I'm going to
No.
put a link on the document for Wikipedia. I just found out about this at work. And so the story is that I haven't looked at it. Let me look real fast because I don't want to misspeak. Yeah, in South Korea, this emerged in the mid to late 2010s on Twitter. And 4B, as in the letter B as in boy, it's the number 4 before that, stands for 4 No's, NOS. And so the name refers to defining the 4 tenets, which all start in the Korean language with BI, roughly meaning no. So the proponents are do not date, do not get married, do not have sex, do not have children with men. So the
Mhm.
concept is to just shut it down.
Right.
And so now it's apparently becoming a thing and a trend here in the US.
Yeah.
That potentially women are going to be like, nope, not on my watch. Like, you're not going to force me to have children. You're not going to force me to have sex. You're not going to force me to be in a relationship. And that's one of the intriguing things, is like, those advances, like me talking about being able to have your own like line of credit in your own name,
Mhm.
having jobs, owning homes, like all that kind of stuff. We've made, I want to say, I don't want to misspeak, but I think we've made a lot of that type of stuff pretty equitable. And so from that perspective of gender, there's no reason to get married, have kids, that kind of stuff. So to me, Damon, it's interesting you're talking about like the perspective of people getting divorced. But I mean, this has kind of happened a little bit before. I just think we're much more attuned and aware of it now because of
Right.
social media.
Right.
That couples are like, nope, not
Yeah.
dealing with it.
And this is very interesting. I knew some of it. I didn't know what the B's were. But it makes sense that this is a thing, because
Mhm.
again, that's part of the um the main thing that I've been seeing is women are um, over the loss of bodily autonomy, um, and voting things being voted for them that is against them or what they're what they want. Woo. Um, and you know, this is a very interesting um, potential, movement, and I'm kind of, I mean, it is a radical idea. I don't know how I feel about it fully, but I think it is something that I think is, like you said, Gary, is something that would has more precedent and more clout now than it would have had maybe 50, 60, you know, 70 years ago.
Right. I mean, and I think what I find interesting is, I guess, this has always existed. Not always, as I just said about the credit card thing. This has existed for quite some time, like, especially in our lifetimes. For decades now, people have had autonomy to make the decisions about their own lives and their futures in several ways. It's just interesting to me that, like, it is becoming a discussionary point, especially specifically among women, and taking their future into their own hands, so to speak, and making decisions they want to do about that. Which I'm like, good on you. Although it's unfortunate that it had to be this circumstance to, I guess, make this more of a thing, as opposed to recognizing or realizing that, earlier or sooner. But I'm also incredibly biased because I talk about this very openly at work, that I have to constantly like readjust my perspective on some things. I know especially in my late 30s, I was kind of an ass to people because they would bellyache about their personal life. They would bitch about having kids, or not about having kids, but about their kids and like the impact on their life or their spouse and this and that. And I would say things like, well, you decided to have kids, or you decided to be married. And I wasn't trying to do it to be a jerk. I was trying to do it to prove a point. Like, you chose this. This is the outcome of that. And I would only say it, I felt, when it was compelled, because I probably got fucking tired as shit of listening to your ass bellyache. Like, so I wouldn't say it right off the bat, but after a certain point, I'd be like, girl, zip it. Like, I've kind of had enough of listening to you, like, do nothing about your circumstance. All you do is complain.
Right.
Or like, give grief about it.
Right.
And while I can understand to a certain point that, like, no, not every life is perfect, and spouses do drive each other crazy from time to time, and kids can be incredibly challenging, there's also a part of me that's like, you chose that, though. Like, and I guess because, and this is the thing I was talking about with somebody at work, I'm like, I just have a very different perspective. I'm an only child. I've been single most of my life. Like, I've been independent. I've done my own things. And I've had difficulties in my past in which I've had to own my, like, responsibility, like my aspect of what created the circumstances that I was in. Not that I enjoyed it, but I've been through those life lessons. So that's, I guess, where I'm probably struggling, and seeing other people, I guess, struggle with their things, but maybe this is their first go round in learning that lesson. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, to Bobby's point in the live chat, it is only 4 years, but child, that's 1,460 days.
4 long years.
And I do think it's, while it is only 4 years, it is 4 years, right? It's not like this is just going to all happen and it'll be over quickly. There's a lot stacked in favor of what the plans are, what we've been hearing are things that he wants to do. there's a lot that he can do, that he can make happen, because a lot of the current things that could potentially block him are already in his favor.
Mm-hmm.
So Republican, just so everyone knows, like oh gosh, I think the House is Republican, the Senate is Republican. I could be wrong. I'm probably
The
saying
Senate
wrong.
is definitely Republican. The House hasn't been fully determined yet.
Right.
It's
And
it's
then
highly likely that it could be.
yeah. And then the the current Supreme Court is very, like, it leans like 5-2 conservative. So there is I think, and that probably is contributing to a lot of others' fears and concerns,
Mhm.
because there are things that he has said he wants to do, that he will now have the potential ability to do, because he has a lot of this other things backing to back him up, as it were. Not that they will. I'm just saying that that's there.
Right.
And the that's I think everyone's sort of like afraid of that, because he's made some very wild claims, which he often does.
Always does.
Yeah, always. And
Right, because he's a consummate liar. He can never say
Right.
anything without.
right.
No.
And that's sort of where it's at, is that yes, he said all of these things, but can he make them happen? Maybe. But I don't think he can make everything happen. I don't think it's going to happen very quickly. And what a lot of people are saying is that a lot of what he has wanted to do will not have the outcome that he wants it to have, or it's going to take a lot of time and money and energy and resources, and has the potential to be not this positive thing that he believes it's going to be, but has the potential to be very, very, very negative on the country. Um, yeah, so I think that's why we're worried, because what can happen in 4 years? And um, this time around, it's going to sound really crude. We don't have a pandemic to affect everything. Hopefully, God, hope not. But
Oh,
like,
don't count out Mother Nature.
true,
Trust.
true.
Like, there is always the potential of something and it being worse. Like, that's the thing I know from working in public health. Not that I'm wishing this upon our future, but after we got through COVID-19, it was already like, okay, what other zoonotic virus things are there out there, and how could that potentially become more harmful? I mean, right now we're dealing with bird flu in like the dairy industry. Like, I mean, like, so, the reality is, in my opinion, we as a human society have been absolutely disastrous to our environment, and it pushes back. So it's like, if you take away trees, they can't handle the carbon. If you remove other species from the structure, it impacts up and down the chain. And so there's so many things that are happening. I'm like, oh, absolutely, there could be potential for another thing. But to your point, Damon, I don't know if that will be something that becomes a major factor in the next 4 years of the presidency.
Yeah. We I think the best thing to do, I just had a similar sort of conversation. There was one of the new members in the chorus. He's a young guy, and he was noticeably stressed, feeling his feelings about everything. So we had our rehearsal on Wednesday night. And you could tell just because normally they're pretty engaging, He wasn't engaging, and he had a couple people, sit down and kind of like talk with him alone. And I saw him at the end, and I kind of, you know, gave him a hug, and someone else came over, and we all kind of said that, yeah, we've done this before, we can do it again. And that's sort of the thing that I am trying to hold on to. Um, we as a people are surprisingly resilient, um, as ones who find their own families in a lot of ways sometimes, and sometimes have had to step away from our blood family because of shit like this. Um, we've often found strength and can get through a lot. Um, is it going to suck? I believe absolutely. I think it's going to suck.
Mhm.
And not in the good, happy, fun, everyone has a great time way. It's going to suck. And, but I think we have the potential to get through this. And the main way we're going to have to get through it is by not throwing other things under the bus and moving forward together. If that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
like a lot of this again. Social media, fuck it. I've been seeing a lot of people taking their trash out, as it were, um, in regards to like people who are there are a lot of people who have been posting things about like the election and talking about like it's LGB and not TIA and all that shit, and that has been very disheartening. But I am seeing the immediate response from people like, yeah, don't no, fuck that person, you know, we're letting other people know that's not someone that we align with. They can go, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So hopefully that is a sign of positive change to happen in the future for us. It's I feel like it's gonna suck, and
Well,
I know. Go ahead.
we do have midterm elections too. So
True.
in 2 years, whatever the Republican Congress could go down as kind of a response to the results of this election in 2 years. So that would bring in checks and a little bit more checks and balances to the president in 2 years. It's still in
Mhm.
2 years, but you know how quickly Congress gets through its things? Not very fast.
Yeah.
So it could be very beneficial for that. So this is one of the reasons why people should be ready to vote, essentially on a moment's notice.
Right.
And
There's a
just
Go ahead.
voting in general, uh, the election itself is fraught with just problems. Well, maybe that might be a little bit of exaggeration, but there are a few things that I believe in for the vote. One, I don't think our at least for president, our electoral system um, actually represents necessarily accurately represents the United States. And I'm talking about the electoral college.
Mm,
If we keep
yeah.
the electoral college, then we really need to adjust the rules because I really believe in instead of somebody winning all of the electoral votes for a state, the electoral vote should be divvied up based off of how well they did in the state. So
Mm,
someone doesn't win all the votes in a state, but a percentage based off of the voting in the state. So some may have gone to Kamala, some may have gone to Trump, some may have gone to Jill Stein, etc. So that we don't get that 100%. One problem with that would be, and then we would need to change the rules to how many electoral votes you would need to win for it, because you wouldn't necessarily have somebody win 270 votes. And at that point, we might as well get rid of the Electoral College and just go with by popular vote. There was a reason why the Electoral College was put into effect in the beginning. It was because of just trying to get the results. The results of the presidential election were known to somebody the next day. Even if all the votes were counted against between all the states way back when, the first, second, third, fourth presidential elections, because they were counted locally, the results were taken by horseback or something to the next place, until it finally gets to one place, and then the news disseminates. And that could probably take weeks. Now we know almost instantaneously. When I went to bed at around midnight on Tuesday to Wednesday, it was pretty clear. Actually, I think somebody already had called that President Trump had the votes. So it was very, very quickly. Because we can get this information so quickly, we don't need all these structures we don't need to vote in the electors in order to then cast their electoral vote and go to the congressional voting or whatever it's called. That was really the point of the Electoral College to begin with, and honestly, we don't need that anymore. I mean, in the end, based off of a little presidential election results Google search, we had President Trump got 50.4% of the popular vote. He won 312 electoral votes, with Vice President Harris getting 226. Basically, the electoral votes were split between the two, because all the other candidates, Jill Stein, Robert Kennedy, Chase Oliver, and some other people who didn't get barely any. And Kamala Harris got 48% of the vote. Trump got 50.4, but 312 versus 226. 312, that's like 57% of the electoral vote. So, well, yes, in the end, popular vote wise, Trump won. He got the most votes. Over 50% even. Barely over 50%, but still. Beat Kamala by...
Kamala.
I've heard it said many ways. By like almost 4 million votes. Maybe in like 3.5.
Yeah, it's currently floating around 3.6 million.
Yeah. So it was really close. But if you're only looking at the Electoral College, not as close. Right. So in the end, even if we had gone by the popular vote, Trump would still have won. But I really believe that the Electoral College needs to just go away. for presidential elections. We don't need it anymore. Archaic
I mean, I think that's a
laws. The laws are meant to be changed to adapt to the culture at the time and the
right,
means.
and I think that's fair. That's been talked about like every 4 years though,
Yeah.
for like probably the last like 3, 4, or 5 election cycles. But I think that was always discussed because the party that got the popular vote felt that was a justification. Things are different this time around. Like, I think this is the part also that people are struggling with, is that the majority of Americans that voted also, not only on electoral college wise, but to your point, Jeff, like voted in favor of, making him president again. And I think that's the part that is hard for folks is, there'll be weeks to go, a couple months before, the data really kind of gets crunched so you can see where things shake out at. But like, this is what I find interesting is a lot of people were thinking we were going to have to go weeks before we knew what the actual results were, because everyone presumed, not everyone, a lot of, again, biased bubble, a lot of folks presumed that it would probably be Harris that would win, but wouldn't win in such a way that was a landslide, that there was going to be all these contests and there was going to be all these court cases, and it was just going to get dragged out and dragged out and dragged out. And the fact that within 24 hours, basically, it was done. And there's no disputing. There's no, kind of hedging it out or trying to figure it out. I think that's also rocked a lot of people because they weren't ready for that. They had no idea. And to me, this is kind of like 2016 again. And I've been telling people, I was like, we as an American society, in my opinion, lived in a really messy, concept of what we thought America was. And to me, this is very reflective of like the 80s, where we thought we knew what America was, and then all this stuff was kind of starting to come out, and we were figuring this out about ourselves as a nation. And it's just, to me, it's sort of cyclical, and it's happening again, only a lot of folks are really struggling with determining and finding out that there's a lot of people who are okay with putting up with or accepting ad libs fill in the blank, because what was more important to them was, again, fill in the blank. And I don't know how people reconcile that for themselves. I really don't. I think that will be the biggest challenge. I know for me it was difficult for the 4 years to come to terms with knowing that people felt a certain way or had a certain output, or philosophy or viewpoint or whatever. And I think a fair amount of folks, understandably for my bubble, felt shell shocked, when things kept happening within the 4 years, and they were like, "This is okay. This is okay. This is okay." Like it just kept progressively getting kind of wilder or crazier or whatever. And this is the part I think that concerns me the most, is this new administration is potentially, if what they say their ideas are going to become fruition, they are vastly looking to shake things up and change. And that, I think, was a motivation for people to vote the way they did, because they got tired of politics as usual, government as usual. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's a motivating factor.
Right. And I think that's part of it, is that's what I think people believe is going to be the case. There's someone that is saying that, oh, we're going to shake things up. We're going to do something different. We're going to make all these changes. We're going to blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And this is a problem, so I'm going to fix it, and yada, yada, yada. Like he's done and said all of these things over and over and over again. And while that's fair, and I can understand that is the appeal, my main counter has often been he had 4 years to do it, and he did. you saw
Well,
like he had an opportunity to do some of these things and he didn't. And we're now going to give him another opportunity. And I can understand being weird about the like the way things are in the politics and the way like life has been. But there's a stronger part of me that goes, how would changing it potentially affect you? And are you ready for those changes?
well, so to your point about like he had 4 years before, he had a lot of people to counterbalance him. And that is very disconcerting to people now because they feel like all those handcuffs, all of those guardrails, all the like bumpers have been removed or will be removed in a new administration. And we won't have the watchdogs, the people to say no, to push back or whatever. And that's where my philosophy is that, oh no, there will be some big changes coming. But whether or not they deliver on a promise is another issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's the concern for me, is that people are going to be like, oh, look at all this change that's happening. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Like his administration is doing exactly what they said they were going to do. Okay, but are the results going to be the desired results? Like, not to get into the politics of it, but it's like, if the tariffs go into place, will it do exactly what it said what they say it's going to do? Is it really going to like bring $2 trillion to the deficit, like to like reverse that? Like, and that's the part that I'm like, I don't know. But I'm also concerned about my mouth because I think I'm going to pop off at people when they're bitching about how eggs are $20 a dozen. And I'll be like, did you vote for that? So
we've already had that conversation.
No, I know, but that's what I mean. Like my mind keeps kind of coming back to that, is like, well, what will those outcomes be? I mean, I told my former director, who retired a couple years ago, when we were just into the new administration, but there were concerns about the Supreme Court and the Roe v. Wade outcome, which ultimately, ended up getting reversed. And I remember talking to my director about my concerns about the future of prophylactics, specifically condoms, because it's a big program that I run in our county to make them available for free to the community. And I remember my director was like, oh, you don't have to be concerned about that. And I was like, excuse me? And they were like, you think that's legitimate? I said, absolutely, it's legitimate. It's a way to prevent life. Why? I was stunned that this person, who I know is a person of faith, is involved in their church, like, and is very progressive, did not see the writing on the wall. I was just flabbergasted. I was like, a person who presumably is like pro women's, like, health, did not seem to understand that could be an outcome of it, that they could change the funding, change the rules, and like maybe not outright outlaw them, but make a lot of their availability very difficult.
Right.
Because to them, it's no different than taking a medication, like to prevent a pregnancy. Like, that's so wild to me that like people kind of didn't understand that. So, I mean, those are some of the things that I think about in terms of stuff. I mean, my coworker flat out asked, like, what do you think's going to happen? Like, will we lose our funding? And I was like, I don't think we'll lose our funding. I said, but it will become challenging because now more than ever, everything is going to come down to data. The data has to prove and vet why you do what you do, like the expense of it. Like, technically, that's always been the case. But now I think there could be some heavy scrutiny as to how the quote unquote taxpayer dollar is used to spend on something. And then I also kind of threw it in somebody's face a little bit this week. This is what I mean. I got to be careful with my mouth, because we were talking about something and I was like, what, don't you understand? I'm like, oh, no. We don't need government to do that. Commerce, corporations can do that. Businesses can handle that. We just contract it out. Government doesn't need to be doing that. We can pay somebody else to do that. And I was using it as an example because I think I've discussed it on the podcast. I'm president of my union, and I gave a perfect example of something happened locally and how administration, and I don't think they intended to do this, but this is what happened. We brought up an issue to them that was like had legal ramifications. And like one of the highest levels of administration was like, what? Like they had no idea. And so they like, the buck starts to get passed down, so to speak. And so they turn at the table and they're like, how could that happen? And then someone else is like, well, don't you remember? Like there was this grant and we did this thing and like, we got awarded the money and then we put out a request for proposal and there was a bid and there was a vendor. And I was explaining to someone, I was like, oh, so eventually the way the story gets told is, well, it's the vendor's fault. We can't be held accountable to that. The vendor did it.
Mm.
I was like, do you understand how that works? I'm like, they take no responsibility for choosing the vendor or vetting the vendor. Oh no, it's the vendor didn't tell us that was illegal. Really? Is that how you want that to operate? Like, and I'm not saying that's always going to happen, but because I've had that exact experience, I was like, oh, so that's a way that this could play out. That they kind of like wash their hands and be like, well, no. Like, so-and-so takes care of that now. We've given over the responsibility of that. Like the work doesn't get done by public servants. No. Like we gave that to the private sector. And the thing is like nothing is perfect. Everything has problems and is flawed. So there's really kind of no winning or something being better. That being the case, though, I do want to talk briefly about something before we go to wrap up. So for those of you that happen to be on Twitter/X, you may have seen in the past few days, a lot of people are leaving and sharing and posting being like, peace out, see y'all. Like, this is a problematic platform. And now that we know that the owner like is probably going to be part of the administration, I want nothing to do with this. To me, I feel like deja vu, and I'm like, oh, it's just like Tumblr all over again. Like everybody left and went to Twitter, and now most people, it appears, are leaving Twitter and going to Blue Sky.
Right. And I had that happen, and I did have those thoughts, and I'm trying to make a decision for myself. And I'm not 100% certain what I'm going to do. I think one of the things actually I probably will be doing, I'm probably going to just lock my account down. So it's just for like me and the followers that I already have. It does mean I won't get more potentially, or, it's going to be fewer and far between that I'm going to get a follower. But, I think I could be okay with that. It also means I may potentially delete it all altogether. Although people are saying don't necessarily delete your account because then you won't get the name. You couldn't get the name back if things change. So I may just not because you can't deactivate the account. That's essentially deleting it. I may just lock it down and then scrub it clean, and see what happens. I don't know. As many have indicated, it's a lot of work. It has the potential to be a lot of work, and it's a lot of taking time. If there was a quick and easy way to do it, I would probably do that. But I know that that's not going to be the case. So I'm trying to make that decision. But I am over on Blue Sky. Hey, but I've had that one for a while, and now that I know that there's a potential to create another account or add an account, I may do that as well. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not fully convinced yet. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. I did want to address a couple of questions that Bobby was asking in the chat. The first one is Congress going to pass a budget in 2025? I don't know that. I know they haven't approved. Wait, there's On May 23rd, the U.S. House Appropriations Committee adopted their fiscal year 2025 subcommittee allocations by a party line vote of 30 to 22. So I think that maybe the budget for 2025 has already been done. And when did this
No,
come?
I think that's more going into 2025. So,
Right.
uh, we will see. We are not political pundits.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say this: if they get the House, absolutely they'll be able to pass a budget next year.
Yeah.
Like everything will pretty much sail through. So
Right.
confirmations, judges, politicians, anybody appointed, there's no reason any of it won't go through.
Yeah.
Except for, I mean, there is a percentage possibility that something won't, like a person or a thing won't happen, but it's kind of slim because, like it has to be so egregious. And the reason why I'm saying it's so egregious is I'm going to say this. The nation has elected a felon, a person who's been prosecuted for sexual assault, a person who is questionable morally on like a whole bunch of things. So I'm
He
like,
still has some cases still active that haven't been sentenced.
right, like which may very well go away.
I
And
swear
so
I heard somewhere that one of them actually would involve him having jail time.
Yeah.
well, I don't think they're likely to happen now, but
Yeah.
the reality is, like, if that's at the top of the pyramid, what makes you think that any person put up for any position is not gonna get the position? Like, I just don't know what the limit is. If we haven't already reached the limit, I don't know what the limit is. So to me, if the House does end up becoming Republican, most likely everything will pass, like without an issue of any kind.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm like,
just to answer the first question, every year the U.S. Congress begins work on a federal budget for the next fiscal year. So, and the federal government's fiscal year runs October 1st of the calendar year through September 30th of the next. So the one for 2025 has already been
Yeah,
done.
I always hear about like government shutdowns and passing and signing and stuff like near the beginning of the year. So I'm gonna say question mark. I don't know.
Yeah. So we'll see if one will pass for 2025. It's going to, like Gary was saying, it's going to depend on who's there.
I have a feeling we'll be okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, it will go through. I won't say we're okay. No, I retract that statement. It's going to go through. Government shutdowns, probably not. Probably, maybe, I don't know. Again, we're not political pundits. Is there room for compromise? There's always room for compromise. Will they actually compromise? That's another matter altogether.
Right.
Another thing is just because we do have a Republican in the Senate and such does not necessarily mean that they agree on every single issue or everything will always go through perfectly fine. Right. There are those moderate Republicans. There are the moderate Democrats. So it can still swing either way. Less likely, but it can happen.
Right. I think like in regards to is there room for compromise? I agree with you, Jeff. I think it's going to be a matter of whether people are willing to make that happen. And that's sort of the reality of it all. Like it can't compromise is two parties or more in a sense, like coming into a room together to talk about something and potentially come up with a solution where there's a give and take. We don't know if there are people, one, that are even willing to go into the room, as it were, and then two, once that conversation happens, are they willing to bend? Are they willing to compromise? Will they, on either side of it, I'll even say that, are they willing to give in a bit to allow what they potentially want to happen, while also potentially um, to potentially gain what they want out of it. So that's the compromise part of it. And
It,
again, as Jeff has said, it's a matter of we're not political pundits. We don't really follow along with a lot of this. We're just podcasters that are having a conversation. Um, you know,
our thoughts
do
and
we compromise
feelings.
on things?
Only for
Yeah,
ourselves. Nobody
our
else.
opinion. This is my opinion. Anyway,
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, the big thing is going to be about, at least for the Democratic agenda, should at least be damage control. And there will be damage, but trying to mitigate how much damage. Let's hopefully things don't get into a complete and utter disaster, just a little bit of a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much in a wait and see kind of mood
Agreed.
about things. But I will say this: I was watching a YouTube video where there were some, to be fair, older gays discussing like what the like LGBT community can do in terms of its own awareness and not policing, but what to choose to do in the future. And I thought it was really interesting because they were all pretty much in agreement for the most part to being you should be doing your research. Is the event holder a Republican that voted for Trump? Do you want to give them your money? Do you want to go to this event? And it started to beg the question to me, and well, where do you draw the line? What about the airline owner? What about the hotel owner? What about the catering or whoever you get your food from? I found it very interesting because I was where do you kind of say you will and won't do things?
Yeah, those type of situations where you're going to have to look more of kind of a majority of things. You can't specifically say one thing or not. For example, to go kind of outside necessarily the 100% political damage, let's talk about a huge controversy that happened in the gaming community. Specifically, Blizzard Entertainment, my favorite makers of video games, because I've been playing WoW since 2004. Yeah, over the past, well, it's calmed down now, but over the past couple of years, there have been allegations of misogyny and sexism, and although that was kind of the same thing, and sexual harassment, and a lot of really terrible, awful things. Does that mean you should boycott playing these games? Not necessarily, because there are a lot of people that are working at that company that you want to support. There are people who you don't want to support, but there are people who you do want to support because they're making a fun game for you and they're having troubles. So it comes to this decision: do you want to do the thing because some of the higher ups are being shitheads? What about all the people below them that are essentially the victims of the shitheads?
I mean, I think that's a valid point.
You got to kind of weigh the decision. Is and honestly, the only reason why I stopped playing WoW for a while was just because I didn't like the story of the game. I just didn't like the game that I had. And that I had. So that's why I wasn't playing at that time. But even while these allegations were, I would still want to play games. I wanted to play some Diablo, maybe some StarCraft. I dip my toe back into WoW for a while there. It's all this back and forth of things of how I want. This is kind of the same thing. Right? If our president is a shithead, What about all the other government agencies? What about the other political things? If you're going to a bear run, okay, this one guy who's high up in the chain is a major had voted for Trump, is a huge Republican, etc. If it's more about the event as a whole, if it's affecting the event as a whole, maybe that's where you want to make the decision not to support that. But if it is just one guy, but there's other people kind of going against them, that could be another thing. It's a difficult decision.
I hear you on that, Jeff, but you have to think about the impact of that. If the head of Blizzard is like a staunch, Trump supporting Republican, and millions of people are giving that company money, which turns into profit that person has in the form of stocks or investments or whatever, and they give millions of dollars to a campaign or to sway an outcome of something that's legislative, like that, I think that's the part that people really are going to have a hard time reckoning with and saying, like, when they can kind of draw the line on something.
That's where I'm saying it's a difficult decision, but you got to also keep that as a factor.
I mean, you can, but I think people don't want to take the time to do that much research or that much effort. And so, I've got this constant battle going on in my head right now because I have coworkers that love to eat at Chick-fil-A. And I've tried talking to them briefly about the fact that that's not something to do. Because of their, perspective on the LGBTQ community. And their response to me is, really? Well, I thought they changed their stance. And what doesn't help the situation is that they have a young gay person that goes with them to lunch. And so I'm like, this is not my battle. I am not going to continue to beat my head about this. But I may silently judge you every single time I see you with that fucking styrofoam cup in your hand. And that's, to me, that's kind of one of the most difficult parts I think people are going to have is to how to figure out.
Also, Chick-fil-A's food, I don't think is very good at all anyway. So,
well, other people think it's like crack cocaine and they can't get enough of it. So it's all a balance. Damon, you're muted.
I know I'm still muted. Literally lines down the block. It's anyway. But again, it's, as we've been kind of saying, I agree. I think doing research is important. I think finding out for yourself and making your own decision is also the main thing too. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you make the personal choice for your morality.
Just know some people are going to judge you.
Yeah, some people are going to be like, yeah, well, that part. Like, just literally today, we posted that we were going to be having, the chorus is going to do, we're going to see Wicked, and we're going to go, like, there's a more centrally located Cinemark in, that's a little bit easier for everyone to get to, blah, 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 blah. Almost a few hours after that, I had one former member, who said, oh, I won't go because I won't support the CEO who's a Trump supporter. I was like, okay, well, awesome. I didn't know that, and now I'm doing my research.
Mm-hmm.
I also asked this person to provide an alternative theater to see, like, again, like, I don't know what I don't know, and that is part of it here. And I'm looking to find out and confirm it, and then I'm also looking at alternates to see what can happen. If the reality is true and he is a transporter, then yes, we'll definitely look at finding someplace else. But from my, current research, the person who was the CEO that was the transporter is no longer the CEO. So that's where I'm at.
And to Damon's point, like, that's a lot more effort and work and responsibility to take on to like go to that nth degree, you know, and figure out what to do about that. And so like I don't think there is a simplified measure of how you go about things. I mean, we've talked about this before when we talked about the HRC, you know, grading system for corporations and that kind of stuff, and trying to figure out what to do. So yeah, it is difficult because if like the person in charge is a shithead, do you hold everybody else in the organization accountable for the shithead? Well, maybe. Like that's a call you're going to have to make on your own, because there could be some really great people that work for them and kind of have nothing to do with the shithead. And
Right.
that's also difficult because it's like, should they be, you know, penalized or, you know, treated a certain way because of that? Well, I mean, that's quite possible what could happen. I mean, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Americans are looked upon in a certain way outside of our own country if we were to travel abroad, because they're like, you know, they could easily be looking at it like, you put that fascist into, you know, allowed him to become president. So, yeah, I think the world has been complex forever. We're just figuring that out over the past like 20 years, roughly. That like with the advancement of technology, and this is the thing I was talking about with someone. I was like, now more than ever, we know so much, but it's also so much to know and figure out what to do about that.
Right.
So yeah, like I don't know. I'm kind of in a wait and see, but I'm also not sure quite how things will play out.
All right, crackpot theory. No real evidence, just completely thoughts about some things to change for a better America. One, the older generation needs to start dying off. Not that I want them to actually die. I want them all natural deaths, like dying in their bed. I'm not wishing illness, but you know, they naturally die. No culling of previous generations. They just need to start dying off. They're getting older. That's one thing that will help get rid of those voters. Let's go into the new generation voting. Younger generations needs to get out and vote. Middle generations needs to get out and vote. Everybody needs to get out and vote. And also the stigma, and this is actually one of the reasons why the older generation start dying off, is because I think one part is the stigma of people thinking of like, wait, woman president? No, we can't have that. Has to be a man. Which is pure and utter bullshit. When we have that first woman president, I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican, I think we'll be okay. But I think it's about time to get a woman president. And I think that's actually one of the reasons. There's a plethora of other reasons that are probably more higher on the list. But one of the reasons why some people didn't vote for Kamala Harris is because she's a woman.
I agree with you. I think that like gender was a factor. I think race was a factor. Like I think there was so much that were just like issues for people. But I don't know. Like I hear you on that, Jeff, and there is a part of me that's like theoretically younger generations are more progressive and they're like much more attuned. But at the same time, I've been saying this for almost 20 years now. We've been failing our American society with a poor education system. We don't instill or show people or foster them to have critical thinking skills. And if you don't have that, you presume a lot and or take things at face value without ever questioning it. That's a dumbing down of society. And if we continue to do that for another generation, that means we're a generation away from being easily like put into whatever
Welcome
the
to
powers that be
Idiocracy.
want it to be. Kind of, but not. I mean, I hear you on that. I just watched
It's extreme.
no, I know, but I just saw a YouTube thing where they talked about that very issue, and they were like, "That's not quite how idiocracy works." But yes, like the principal concept of the people see the parallel, but it's not the same thing. Anyways, the thing is that so that's where I have reservations, because there were young people that voted conservative or whatever. So that's where I'm like, I think there's so many reasons behind what prompted people to go the direction that they did. And yeah. And so I'm just like,
Do we have a
and
demographic
I
chart
think
of the vote?
I think our I think we've also disconnected so much as an American society because of technology. We're just not attuned to what people's experiences and lives are like anymore. And I'm just as guilty of that. Like, I don't know all of my neighbors. I don't know all of their lives. I don't know specifically what's happening with them or what's going on and what's important to them. And so because of that, I'm disconnected and I don't really like have a grasp or an understanding of things. And I think that also contributed to where we ended up at, especially the disbelief and the grief that people are having, because I think some people are like, how could this happen? And I'm like, well, of course it can happen. Like, we just didn't see it coming. Why didn't we see it coming? Well, if we put up walls, if we put in a fence, if we don't engage, we retract, we retreat, we go into our bubbles, like, because our mental health is more important. I don't have enough spoons. Like, I can't engage with people. Like, all these reasons and then some. It makes sense how you just don't know. You're just not aware.
I had a really strange, comparatively speaking, reaction to this election. Is I think I went immediately to acceptance. When I found out, I just went to I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. But here we are. I'm like, crap. And just, I maybe just didn't have any of the stages of grief. And I think I've been desensitized because in 2016, I was like mind blown. And now I'm like, they did it again.
Listen, sometimes you go back, and nobody said you should go back to the X, but we'd be dumb as a human species, because sometimes we're like, well, it wasn't that bad.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. Maybe it wasn't that bad, but it could be worse.
And I think that's where a lot of people, like, when you were the thing that you were talking about in regards to like education and bubbles resounded with me, because I think that's the truth. I think we all kind of, so many of us who are in disbelief were like, this group that I surround myself with, or these people that are in my like social circles and my Facebook and whatever, I could never see anyone. So clearly, like, because all of the people that are around me don't would never vote for him, like, clearly that's going to be the result, and that we're all going to be happy and yada yada yada. Like, I think that was the reality. And then to be faced with the, oh, but it's not, with on Wednesday, like, yeah, that's, I think, part of the hit was you had this concept of what you thought was going to happen because of what you surround yourself with and what you see in all the posts and all of the messaging and social media and everything else that was coming your way, because that is what you have around you. But if you go just beyond that, you realize that maybe that wasn't going to be the case, and that's sort of the truth. Like um, what was it? I think it was the weekend before. Um, not taking like truly, but like I could look around my neighborhood and you can see like the different potential political signs. Some very much like the neighbors right across the street from me this way. Um, have like the Kamala Harrises and the Kamala and Tim Walz and all of those signs. If I look just down the street, there's Trump signs.
Yeah, and I another factor would be like I zoomed into Ohio to see how the counties
Mm-hmm.
allotted and the major cities. We got Toledo, Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati. Those counties are all blue.
Right.
The entire rest of the state is red.
Right.
Except for like one county which doesn't have a major city. So it's the urban people are more on the Democratic side, while the more rural people are on the Democratic side.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is statistically typically been the case for a very long time. And the philosophy has been when you live in an integrated local society, you are much more like aware of like gays are not bad people. People of color are not, crooks or, degenerates or lazy or you know what I mean? Like all these tropes and these stereotypes, you kind of know from living in that like society, that dense population area, that that's not necessarily the case.
Mhm.
But we live in an American society with a lot more rural than we do like
Mm-hmm.
dense population areas.
I would like to know, just like I'd really like to know why the rural areas are more on the Republican side. What is
Oh,
I'm just
do you want?
this is more of I don't know, and I'm curious.
So how do I? Well, I'll say this bluntly: it's easy to scare someone who doesn't, who has so much, quote unquote, to lose when something is different than them. They fear losing something because the person or thing is not what they know. Um, Fear. It's fear. I know that's not a
That
like.
is
There's a
completely unclear.
yeah. There's not going to be a clear answer. There's not a real clear answer.
I need more
Yeah.
specifically why
Well,
rural areas are more Republican.
because the major philosophy of the Conservative Party is like a lot of not in my backyard, don't tell me what to do with my life.
Right.
And therefore, government is a problem because government tends to interrupt my life and tell me what to do, makes me pay more in taxes, doesn't directly benefit me, benefits those other people, gives
Mm-hmm.
handouts to those other people. I don't get the handout. I'm not getting assistance. No one's lifting me up. I'm constantly like busting my ass to barely have what I have or to
Mm-hmm.
get what I get. There's so many reasons, but a lot of it is rooted in a certain viewpoint of an us versus them mentality.
Yeah. And again, it's not. We're I think Gary and I are just like talking
Yeah, like
in generality.
I'm partially doing this as a rhetorical question.
Right.
Like I would authentically like to know the answer. I don't expect you to have the answer.
There was something, and I feel maybe it was NPR, and I'd have to look it up again because it's been a minute, but it was something along the lines of, as Gary kind of said, like it's a very much us versus them. They don't, they sense things that are different than them as a problem. And the only way to resolve that is to keep those that they believe have the power in power.
Well, and I think there's also a lot of like disconnect, perhaps like cognitive dissonance, like that they're not understanding the reality of their circumstance versus another person's circumstance. Like I think a huge piece of it is that they're just not aware or comprehending
Yeah.
About what the impacts are for other people.
Mhm.
And I think it's a very like self-centered kind of viewpoint. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just saying like they don't have that understanding or that awareness.
And I think the three of us realistically wouldn't really have potentially not have that basis. I would say the three of us are mostly are urban or suburban in a way. In our lives, in our jobs, in our, everything that we do. So it's hard to have that rural perspective. Yeah, it's hard to have that rural. Wow, I cannot say that word. I've never been able to say that word, y'all. Just so you know. Nope, still can't say it.
Rural?
That perspective. Rural. Yep. It's not coming out. Sorry. That is. Hey, everybody. David did speech therapy when he was little, and there are words that he still cannot say.
That's
and
fair.
Fuck.
That's fair. Non-urban. There's
There you
your
go.
alternative. Non-urban.
Non-urban.
Non-urban. Suburban
Yeah.
falls under urban because urban is in suburban. Yeah. Anyways, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I think we're at the end.
Yeah.
I think it's important that people, take time to just process. Self-care. Do what you need to.
Yeah. And I would say also make plans. Like people are saying now, if your reaction is to go to another country, do the research. It is possible if what I've been seeing online is true, but it's not going to be like you're there. Like that's the one like for everyone. That's something you have to get out of your head. Just because you're American doesn't mean that you are allowed to just go anywhere you want. So if that is your plan, if that is what you choose to do the research and make sure that you can do that without potentially getting in trouble.
Or just within your means.
Well, within your means is one way. Like there, I mean, that's fair. God, did the thought cross my mind? Yes. Could it happen? Absolutely not. No.
Immigrating to Canada might be the easiest. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, just probably easier.
Yeah. But yeah,
some people might say Mexico is probably going to be a better state than the United States. But be careful, there might be a wall there.
Again, to say like if you whatever thing you're planning to do, whatever you need to do, I say do the research, to kind of put it in a personal perspective.
It's actually a pretty small country, so let's not have millions of people try to immigrate to England. Unless you're like brushed up on other languages, and there's Europe actually is about just a tad bit bigger than the United States, I think. So you do have a nice big space, but majority of the countries, people will probably speak English, not the native language. So One really large country is Australia, but there's one big problem is there's a really big, not urban area. So, and I know most of us gays are very urban. Just watch Priscilla, Queen of the Deserts if you haven't yet. So Australia is an option, though. They speak American. They have
Yes,
New Zealand as an alternate, but
Australia,
that's
New
a
Zealand,
small
Bahamas.
archipelago. So, especially compared to Australia. So, you got a few countries you could go to, but going down to the southern hemisphere might be much more expensive than anywhere in the northern. And I don't think Canada really has as much space as we might think to have the entire gay population move up there. So, in the meantime, also look within your means and such. And honestly, I think we're going to be okay. It's not going to be great. I don't think it's going to be great, but I think we'll be okay. Okay isn't great or good. It's just okay. And we have to put our voice, make sure you vote. Midterm elections will be the next point to at least stymie any of the efforts of the orange president. But here we are. Anyways, there's plenty of ways to contact us. You can pop over to our website, cubsoutloud.com. Shoot us an email at cubsoutloud@gmail.com. Leave us a voicemail at 361-COL-TALK. You can follow us on Facebook. Have we created a Blue Sky account? Probably need to do that. Probably should do that. We are currently on Twitter/X. And of course, we're right here on YouTube at Cubs Out Loud in the appropriate place of the URL. You can join our entourage chat at bit.ly/telegram-col. You can find out when we're planning or recording these shows by checking down our Google Calendar at bit.ly/calendar-col. You get various accoutrements at zazzle.com/Cubs Out Loud. I haven't been feeling very good, so we're a little behind on a few things. But some of those designs were designed by Smashy. You can find more of his work at tpublic.com/user/SmashyTheBear. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/CubsOutLoud or send us a donation at paypal.me/CubsOutLoud. On any of the podcasting platforms, please rate us or review us, like us, whatever they have on those platforms. You can find me anywhere in the internet as Box at Box Puppy, Box Cub, Box something or other, Box Cub on Blue Sky. Demon.
If you wish to get in touch with me, you can find me as pup_79 on Blue Sky, or pup_Umbra on Twitter for now. Those are not safe for work. For the safe for work stuff, you can find me as DMAGamer79 on TikTok and Twitter for now.
Gary?
Sorry, I'm creating an account. So if you want to find me, you can pretty much find me anywhere online as Gabber73. Just like on Twitter, my Blue Sky now is Gabber73XXX.
And with that, I forgot to do a thing.
That's what I changed.
Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good one, y'all.
Stay out there.